She moved like a shadow through the wide metallic halls, her steps light, her eyes lowered, her hands carrying a tray without the slightest tremor. Her name was not important to those around her, for the aliens who owned her only called her servant, a word spoken without care. Without feeling, to them she was not a person. She was a tool, built to obey, designed to move at command and nothing more. She had been trained since birth never to smile, never to question, never to show emotion. She obeyed every order with silence, her face still like a mask, her heart locked away where no one could see. In the grand hall where alien lords feasted, she poured their drinks, cleaned their plates, and lowered her head whenever they looked at her. None of them noticed her. None of them cared. She was as invisible as the chair they sat upon, and for years she believed this was her purpose. This was all her life could ever be. But one evening, something changed. A human had arrived in the hall, a rare sight in this world where humans were not welcome. He sat quietly, unlike the others who shouted and laughed, his eyes calm, watching everything with strange patience. When she moved to serve him, she expected the same treatment she always received. No thanks, no kindness, no glance, only silent dismissal. But when she placed the glass before him, he looked directly at her, his eyes steady, and said one word she had never heard spoken to her before. "Thank you." She froze, her hand tightening against the tray, her mind confused. The alien lords laughed at a joke across the table, not even noticing. But she heard the human's voice echo in her head. No one had ever thanked her. No one had ever spoken to her as if she mattered. It was a small thing, a tiny sound. Yet it made her chest feel heavy in a way she did not understand. She bowed her head quickly and turned away, her mask of obedience unbroken. But inside her something had shifted. The night dragged on with the usual noise of drunken lords and sharp orders. Plates were tossed aside, wine spilled across the floor. And she cleaned with silent hands, but her ears strained without reason, listening for the human's voice again. She told herself it was foolish, meaningless. But her heart did not listen once. As she bent to gather a broken goblet, she glanced toward him. He was watching her, not with disgust, not with ownership, but with a quiet curiosity that felt dangerous. Their eyes met for less than a breath, and she quickly looked down. But the moment burned into her like fire. Later, as she walked through the dim corridors after the feast, she tried to silence her thoughts. Her training told her she was nothing. Her orders were simple. Her life was fixed. But the human's voice whispered inside her, that simple word breaking the silence she had always carried. She touched her chest, feeling the strange rhythm of her heart. Faster than usual, louder than it should be. She did not know the name of this feeling, and perhaps she feared to know. Yet it was there, alive inside her. For the first time in her life, the perfect servant had cracked that night. She lay in the narrow corner where servants were kept, the cold floor her only comfort. Around her, other silent girls slept without dreams, their faces as still as stone, but she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the human's face, the way his lips curved around the word "thank you," the way his gaze seemed to see her, not the mask, not the role, but her. She trembled and curled tighter against the wall, afraid of her own thoughts, for she knew if the overseers ever sensed change in her, they would punish her, maybe even erase her mind to make her pure again. And yet, the more she tried to bury the memory, the stronger it became, like a seed breaking through stone, the first sign of something alive where nothing should have been. By morning, she returned to her duties as always, her mask of obedience back in place, her steps steady, her voice silent. But behind her cold eyes, a war had begun. She did not know it yet, but the human's simple kindness had awakened something that could never be chained again, something she had never dreamed of, something more dangerous than any command, the beginning of feelings. The hall was quiet in the morning, the alien lords gone, the floors littered with the remains of their feast. She moved silently as always, picking up plates, scrubbing the wine stains, polishing the silver without a sound. The other servants worked beside her, their faces blank, their movements perfect, and none of them spoke. It was routine, nothing new. Yet something inside her had changed, something she tried to hide. Her mind kept circling back to the human. His voice had been soft yet strong when he said those two simple words, "Thank you." The sound still lived inside her, as though he had carved it into her heart. She had tried to ignore it, but it returned every time her thoughts wandered. Why had he said it? What did it mean? Why did it feel so heavy? These were dangerous questions. questions she had never asked before. That afternoon, the human returned. The alien lords gathered again, boasting of their power, mocking their rivals, drinking as if the galaxy belonged only to them. She moved through the crowd, silent, careful, unnoticed. Until she reached him, he was different from them, his posture calm, his voice quiet. He did not roar or shout like the others. When she placed a fresh cup of wine in front of him, she braced herself, waiting, and again he looked at her, his eyes steady, and whispered, "Thank you." Her fingers trembled, almost spilling the cup. She forced herself to bow and step back, but her heart was racing. The alien overseer noticed the hesitation and narrowed his eyes. "Faster!" he barked, striking the ground with his cane. She obeyed quickly, hiding the shake in her hands, hiding the storm inside her chest. The human's gaze followed her, calm but unyielding, as if he saw everything she tried to bury. Hours passed, the feast grew louder, and she worked harder. But every time she passed his side, he gave her that small gift again, a quiet word, a soft look. She was afraid others would notice, afraid of punishment, yet she could not deny the warmth that spread inside her each time. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also alive. For years she had lived like a machine, but now when he spoke to her she felt more than obedience. She felt something she could not name. Later, when the hall emptied, she carried a bucket of scraps to the waste chambers. Her hands ached, her back bent, yet her mind burned with questions. Why did he treat her this way? What was his purpose? Did he not know she was only a servant? And then she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, careful, she turned, and there he was, the human, standing in the dim corridor. For a moment she froze, her eyes wide, her breath caught. Servants were not allowed to speak unless spoken to, and never to guests, never to lords. But his expression was not commanding, not cruel, only curious, almost gentle. "You work all day," he said softly, his voice steady. "Do they ever let you rest?" She lowered her eyes quickly, unsure how to respond, afraid of punishment, afraid of being caught. He tilted his head, studying her silence. And then for the first time he smiled. It was not the sharp smile of the lords, not a smirk of power, but a simple human smile. Something inside her chest tightened painfully, as if her heart itself wanted to reach for that warmth. She whispered before she could stop herself, the words slipping through her lips like stolen breath. "No." It was the first time she had spoken outside of orders in years, maybe her whole life. Her voice was quiet, fragile, but it was hers. The human's eyes softened, and he nodded as if he understood. He did not laugh, he did not scold, he only said, "That isn't right." Her throat tightened, fear filling her. If anyone had heard, she would be punished, perhaps even broken beyond repair. But no overseer was near, no other servant dared follow. It was just him and her, standing in the shadows of the hall. She gripped the bucket tighter, her fingers white, her heart trembling. Why was he doing this? Why did he care? And yet, despite her fear, she wanted him to speak again, wanted him to look at her again. She turned quickly and fled down the corridor, leaving him behind, but his words followed her, chasing her into the silence of her narrow cell. That isn't right. Simple words, dangerous words, but words that made her think of things she had never thought before. Was her life truly wrong? Was her obedience truly chains? Was there something else she could be? She did not know the answers, but for the first time, she wanted to know. That night she did not sleep again. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her body still but her mind restless around her. The other servants dreamed nothing, their hearts empty, their faces frozen. But she dreamed for the first time, not of orders, not of chains, but of a human's voice, a human's smile, and in that dream, she was not just a servant, she was someone alive. The days that followed felt heavier than before. She moved as she always did, silent, careful, precise, yet something inside her had changed. The other servants never noticed, their faces blank, their steps perfect, their eyes empty. But she felt the weight of every glance, every command, every silence. The human's words echoed in her mind, and though she tried to bury them, they refused to die. During the feast one evening, she carried a tray stacked with golden cups. The alien lords roared with laughter, slamming their fists on the table, calling for more wine, more meat, more power. Her movements were flawless, but her thoughts were not. When she placed a cup before the human, she hesitated for the smallest breath. Her fingers brushing the rim too long, he noticed, of course, his eyes meeting hers for that fleeting second. And once again he whispered, Thank you. Her mask almost cracked, her lips twitching with something she did not understand. Quickly she lowered her head and turned away. But the overseer's gaze was sharp. He narrowed his eyes, his cane tapping against the floor. He had seen something, a flicker, a flaw in the perfect obedience he demanded. Her heart pounded as she bent lower, scrubbing a wine stain that wasn't there. She could not let them see, she could not let them know. But cracks cannot stay hidden forever. One morning, as the servants lined up for inspection, the overseer walked slowly before them. His eyes scanned every face, his cane striking the ground with rhythm. When he stopped before her, his voice was cold. "You hesitated last night," he said. "Your eyes lingered where they should not." She froze, her throat dry, her mask unbroken. He leaned close, his breath sharp. "Do not forget what you are. You are not allowed to think, not allowed to feel. You obey, nothing more." She bowed her head quickly, her voice trembling. "Yes, master." The others remained still, unblinking as if they had not even heard. But her hands shook at her sides, hidden in the folds of her robe that evening. When the lords gathered again, she worked harder than ever to hide herself. She lowered her eyes, moved quickly, and spoke not a word. But every time the human looked at her, she felt the cracks inside her widening. He did not need to speak to her, yet he did. Always soft, always calm, always different from the rest, and each time, she felt her heart press against the walls of her chest, begging to be free. Later, when she carried a heavy jug through the back corridor, her arms trembling under the weight, he appeared again. No one else was near, only the dim glow of the lanterns and the silence of the stone walls. "Here," he said gently, reaching out to steady the jug. She pulled back quickly, afraid. "No, I cannot accept help." Her voice cracked on the words, and she realized she had spoken without command. The human's eyes softened. "You are not a machine," he said. "You should not live like this." Her chest tightened. Her breath short, she whispered, barely audible. "If they hear you, if they hear me." He shook his head, calm, steady. "Then I will take the blame." She looked up at him, her eyes wide, the mask slipping for the first time. Her lips parted as if she might say more, but fear pulled her back. She lowered her head, clutching the jug tighter, and hurried away into the dark. Yet his words followed her again, breaking through the silence she had always carried. That night, when she returned to the servant quarters, the overseer watched her closely. He lingered in the shadows, his eyes sharp, his voice low. "You are changing," he hissed. "I see it, I smell it. Whatever poison that human feeds you, I will tear it out." She bowed quickly, silent, but inside she trembled. She curled into her corner after the lights dimmed, her knees drawn tight, her eyes wide in the dark. Her thoughts were loud, too loud, filled with questions and feelings she had never known. Why did the human risk himself? Why did his words matter? Why did she want to hear them again? And most of all, why did she feel alive when she was supposed to feel nothing? In the days that followed, she tried harder to keep her mask. She obeyed faster, moved sharper, and stayed silent longer. But inside, the cracks spread like fire through dry wood. Once, when she bent to pick up a goblet, her fingers brushed the human's hand. It was an accident, nothing more. Yet the warmth of his skin lingered, burning into her like a hidden brand. She pulled back quickly, her heart racing, her face blank, but inside a storm raged. The perfect servant was not perfect anymore. She was breaking, and she could not stop it. As the stars rose outside the tall glass walls, she looked at them with trembling eyes. For the first time, she wondered if there was more beyond chains, more beyond obedience, more beyond silence. And though she feared the answer, she longed for it. The cracks in the mask had begun, and soon, the whole mask would shatter. The grand hall glowed with firelight that evening. The alien lords gathered once again, their voices loud and cruel. The servants moved in silence, their steps light, their faces empty, their hands carrying plates and jugs without pause. Among them she worked as always, her mask fixed, her eyes lowered, her body trained to obey. Yet inside, the cracks grew wider with every passing moment. The human was there again, sitting near the edge of the long table. He did not laugh with the lords, he did not drink until his voice roared. Instead, he watched quietly, his gaze steady. When she placed a cup in front of him, his eyes met hers, and as always, he whispered, "Thank you." The words struck her like a spark in the dark, a warmth she could not hide. Her hand trembled before she pulled it back, but no one noticed. The lords too busy with their boasting all night, her thoughts circled like restless wings. Why did he thank her? Why did he care? What did he see in her that no one else did? The questions burned inside her chest, louder than the overseer's cane, sharper than any command. She wanted to know, she needed to know, even though she was forbidden to ask later. When the feast ended and the lords staggered away to their chambers, she carried the scraps to the waste corridors. The hall was silent now, the air heavy with smoke and spilled wine. Her hands moved, but her mind trembled, and when footsteps echoed behind her, she knew it was him. The human walked slowly, his presence calm, not threatening, only steady. She turned, her eyes wide, her heart racing as if she had been caught. For a long moment they stood in silence, the dim lanterns casting shadows across the stone. Then, before she could stop herself, before fear could chain her tongue, the words broke free. Why do you care?" she whispered, her voice so small it barely carried through the corridor. Her chest tightened, fear flooding her veins. The question was forbidden, dangerous, punishable. No servant was allowed to ask anything. No servant was allowed to want an answer. And yet she had spoken. The human's eyes softened, surprise flickering across his face, then a quiet sadness. "Because you are not a thing," he said, his voice low, steady. "You are alive." Her breath caught, the word alive burning into her like fire. Alive, was she alive, or was she only a tool? A shadow, a machine in flesh. Her lips parted, but no sound came out, her throat tight with fear and confusion. He stepped closer, careful, slow, as if not to frighten her. "You deserve to be free," he said, "to speak, to feel, to choose." Her hands tightened around the empty tray she carried, her whole body shaking. "No," she whispered quickly. "No, I cannot. They will punish me. They will erase me." Her voice cracked, her mask slipping, her fear raw and real for the first time. The human's jaw tightened, his eyes hard with anger, not at her but at the world around them. "They cannot erase what has already awakened," he said, his voice like iron. Her knees felt weak, her heart racing so fast she thought it might break through her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever told her she had worth her whole life. She had been told she was nothing but obedience, but now, here in the shadows, she was being told she was more. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hold the word alive close to her chest, but fear clawed at her. "They will see," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They already suspect." He reached out slowly, and though he did not touch her, his hand hovered near as if offering strength. "Then let them see," he said. "You are not theirs. You are yours." Her eyes burned with something she did not understand, a heat that blurred her vision. Tears, she realized. Tears she had never shed before. She turned quickly, pressing her sleeve against her eyes. Ashamed, confused, afraid, the human did not move closer. He only waited, silent, steady, patient. And in that silence, something inside her shifted. A weight she had carried her whole life cracked open. For the first time, she felt the question not just in her lips, but in her soul, who am I? That night she returned to the servant quarters with her head lowered. But her mind alive, she curled in her corner, listening to the empty breathing of the others. Their hearts as still as stone, but hers pounded with fire. With fear, with longing, she touched her chest, whispering the forbidden words again. "Why do you care?" And though he was not there to answer, the memory of his voice returned calm and steady. "Because you are alive." The perfect servant had broken the greatest rule she had asked, she had wanted, she had dreamed, and once such cracks begin, they can never be sealed again. The next morning began as every other, the sound of the overseer's cane striking the floor, the line of servants standing still, their faces blank, their eyes lowered. She stood among them, her mask in place, but inside she trembled, her heart restless, her thoughts loud. The human's words still echoed in her mind, alive, free. "Choose." She tried to bury them, tried to silence them, but they refused to die. The overseer walked past, inspecting them one by one, his gaze sharp, his cane heavy. When he reached her, he paused, his eyes narrow. "You are too slow lately," he hissed. "I see hesitation where there should be none." She bowed her head, whispering, "Yes, Master," but her fingers curled into fists hidden by her robe, the word alive pressing against her chest like fire. That evening, when the grand hall filled again with noise, she carried a tray of food toward the long table. The alien lords shouted for more, their voices rising like thunder. She placed a plate in front of one of them, but when he spilled wine across the floor and ordered her to lick it clean, she froze. The command hung in the air, the overseer's cane ready, the other servants still as statues. Her heart pounded, her breath sharp, and for the first time in her life, she did not obey. She dropped to her knees, yes, but instead of lowering her mouth to the floor, she reached for a cloth and wiped the spill. A small act, a simple act, but a rebellion all the same. The overseer's cane slammed against her back, the crack echoing through the hall. She flinched but did not cry out. Her face still, though her body trembled. The lords laughed, amused, but the overseer's eyes burned with fury. "Obey without thought," he snarled, "or I will break you apart and build you again." She bowed her head, whispering, "Yes, master." Yet her grip on the cloth was tight, her heart alive with fire. The human watched silently from his place at the edge of the hall. He had seen the refusal, the spark, and though he did not speak, his eyes told her he understood. Later, when the feast ended and she limped through the dark corridor with her bruises hidden beneath her robe, he appeared again. "Why did you stop?" he asked softly. His voice steady, she lowered her head, whispering, "Because I am alive." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and once spoken, they could not be taken back. The human smiled, not with triumph, but with pride. "Then no chain will ever hold you again," he said. Her heart shook at his words, but also with fear. The overseer had seen her hesitation. The lords had laughed, and punishment was coming. She could feel it that night. She lay awake in the servant quarters, her back burning with pain, her mind burning with questions. Was she truly alive? Did she truly deserve freedom? What would happen if she resisted again? And deep inside, one answer whispered back. Yes, the following day, during inspection, the overseer tested her. He dropped a goblet on the ground and ordered, "Pick it up with your teeth." Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. The other servants remained still. Slowly, she bent down, her lips close to the cold floor, but at the last moment she reached with her hand instead. Her fingers closed around the goblet. Her eyes lowered, but her choice was clear. The overseer's cane struck again, harder this time. But her silence was no longer empty. It was filled with fire by the third night. Whispers spread among the servants. They did not speak out loud, of course, but they watched her differently. Some with fear, some with confusion, as if her cracks might spread to them too. But she did not stop, she could not stop. Every act of hesitation, every small refusal, every whisper of choice was like a spark in the dark. And sparks, when gathered, can start a fire. The overseer cornered her one evening after the lords had left. His cane pressed hard against her shoulder. "You are broken," he hissed. "The human has poisoned you, but I will cleanse you. I will erase every thought, every feeling, until you are nothing again." Her heart froze, terror flooding her. She had heard of servants erased, their minds wiped, their hearts turned to stone again. It was worse than death, it was the loss of the small flame she had just found. For the first time she lifted her eyes and met his, her voice trembling but real. "No," she whispered. "I am alive." The overseer struck her hard, but the word echoed louder in her chest, "Alive, alive, alive." And though she fell to the floor, bruised and broken, she held on to that truth with everything she had. That night, as she lay in her corner, her body aching, she thought of the human, of his steady gaze, his quiet smile, his voice that stirred her heart. And she knew the overseer was right about one thing. She was dangerous now, because once a servant learns she is alive, no master can ever fully control her again. The overseers had waited long enough. They had seen her hesitation, her small refusals, the dangerous spark growing inside her. To them she was no longer a perfect servant. She was a broken tool, a threat, a risk that had to be erased, and so, on the cold night when the halls fell silent, they came for her. She was dragged from her corner, her wrists bound in iron, her ankles locked with heavy chains. The other servants did not look. They stood still, their faces blank, their obedience unshaken, but inside, she felt their silence like knives. No one moved, no one dared. Her heart pounded as she was pulled through the dark corridors toward the chamber of cleansing. She had heard whispers of this place, a room where they erased minds, where flames of white light burned every memory, every spark until nothing remained. She struggled weakly, but the chains cut deep, the overseer's cane striking her back with every step. "You will be pure again," he hissed. "No more questions, no more delays. You will obey without thought." The chamber doors opened with a groan, the air inside cold and sharp. Strange machines lined the walls, their lights flickering, their arms fitted with cruel tools. In the center stood a chair of steel, its straps waiting, its surface stained with shadows of those who had come before. They forced her into it, locking her arms, her legs, her head. Fear gripped her throat. Tears stinging her eyes, she whispered, "No, please." The overseer sneered, his voice sharp as he raised his cane. "You are not alive, you are property, you exist to obey." The machine's word to life, a hum filling the air. The smell of burning metal thick around her. Her heart raced, her breath short, her whole body trembling. For a moment, despair threatened to crush her, to drown the spark she had found. But then she remembered the human's voice. "Steady and sure you are alive." The words burned brighter than the fear, stronger than the chains. She pulled against the straps, her wrists bleeding, her body shaking, her voice breaking into the silence. "I am alive," the overseer struck her, furious, his cane crashing across her face. But the words had already escaped, and then the chamber doors burst open. The human stood there, his eyes blazing, his hands holding nothing but his will. The guards rushed to stop him, their weapons raised, but he moved with fury, his fists striking, his body fighting as if the fire inside him could not be stopped. Chains rattled, shouts echoed, the room filled with chaos. The overseer snarled, "Stop him." But the human's voice roared louder, "Let her go." Her eyes widened, her chest aching. No one had ever fought for her. No one had ever risked themselves for her. Tears blurred her vision as she watched him strike down another guard, his breath heavy, his body bruised. But his resolve unbroken, he reached her, his hands fumbling with the locks, his voice shaking but steady. "I will not let them erase you." Her chains fell loose, her body weak, trembling but free. She could not move, her legs numb, but her voice rose, desperate, real. "Behind you," she cried. He turned just in time, blocking the overseer's cane with his arm, the crack echoing, his face twisted in pain. But he did not fall. Instead, he struck the overseer back with a force that sent him sprawling to the floor, his cane clattering away. The chamber filled with smoke as one of the machines sparked and burst into flames. Heat spread quickly, fire licking the walls, consuming the tools meant to erase her. She stumbled to her feet, leaning against the human, her chains dragging across the ground. The overseer tried to rise, his voice sharp with fury. "You are nothing. You are not alive." But she met his eyes, her voice steady, trembling yet strong. "I am alive," she said, louder this time, her words cutting through the roar of the fire, and for the first time she believed it fully. The human pulled her toward the door as the chamber collapsed behind them. Flames spread across the walls, smoke filling the air, guards fleeing in panic. The perfect hall of obedience was cracking, burning, breaking apart. She leaned against him, her breath ragged, her body weak but her heart blazing with something new. Hope. They stumbled into the corridor, the overseer's shouts fading behind them. The human's arm was bleeding, his clothes torn, but his grip on her was steady. "You're safe now," he whispered, though his voice shook with exhaustion. She looked at him, her lips trembling, her heart aching with emotions she had never known before. Fear, pain, relief, and something deeper. Something she dared not name yet, but she knew this: she would never be a silent servant again. The fire roared behind them, chains melted, walls crumbled, the old order shaking with the weight of rebellion. For the first time in her life, she stepped forward, not as property, not as obedience, but as someone alive, and she knew, with every beat of her heart, there was no turning back. The night sky burned with smoke behind them, the chamber of cleansing lost to fire. The overseers shouting in panic as walls cracked and machines fell. She stumbled forward, her wrists raw from chains, her legs weak, yet her heart stronger than it had ever been. The human's hand guided her, steady even though his arm bled and his step slowed. Together they moved through the dark corridors, every echo behind them a reminder of the danger that still hunted them. The servants they passed did not speak, their faces blank, their eyes hollow. But some turned their heads as she moved past, as if sensing something different. Something broken free for the first time. She did not lower her gaze before them. She did not hide her trembling hands. She let them see the fire in her eyes, the truth that could not be erased. "I am alive," she whispered again, as if the words themselves carried power. The human pushed open a side door that led into the open night, the cold air rushing against their faces. Above them, the stars stretched endless and bright. She had seen them before, but never like this, never as more than distant lights over a cage. Now, for the first time, they felt close, as if calling to her. Her chest ached with a feeling she could not name, her eyes wet with tears she did not try to hide. They moved into the forest beyond the hall, the ground soft beneath their feet, the sound of pursuit fading as the overseers fought the flames behind. The human finally stopped near a fallen tree, lowering himself with a groan. His wounds deep, his breath heavy, she knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed cloth against his arm. "You should not have come for me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You should not have risked yourself," he smiled faintly, though pain shadowed his face. "I could not leave you," he said, his eyes steady even through exhaustion. "You are more than they ever let you believe." Her throat tightened, her chest heavy. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever seen her as more than obedience. Tears fell down her cheeks, but this time she did not hide them. For the first time, she let herself cry not out of fear, but out of something deeper. It felt strange, raw, painful, yet beautiful. Her hand lingered on his, her fingers curling gently, afraid yet unable to let go. The forest was quiet, only the rustle of leaves and the distant crackle of fire breaking the silence. She looked at the stars again, her heart trembling, her lips moving softly. "I do not know what this feeling is," she whispered. "I only know I do not want it to end." The human's eyes softened, his voice low. "That is because it is yours," he said. "Not theirs, not mine, yours." Her heart raced, her breath catching. For so long, she had lived in chains, her thoughts silenced, her feelings locked away now here under the stars. She felt her chest alive with warmth, with fear, with longing. It was overwhelming, yet she embraced it, because it was hers and no one could take it. Hours passed before the overseer's shouts finally faded into the distance, the fire consuming the hall behind them. She knew they would come again. She knew their hunt was not over. But she also knew she would never return to silence, never return to emptiness. The human leaned against the tree, his head heavy with weariness. She sat beside him, her hand still on his, her voice quiet but firm. "I was built to obey," she said, her words slow, steady. "But now, my heart obeys only itself." He turned his head slightly, a faint smile touching his lips. "And what does your heart tell you?" he asked. She looked at him, her tears glistening in the starlight, her chest trembling with an emotion she had never dared to imagine. "It tells me," she whispered, her voice breaking yet strong, "that it belongs here, with you." Silence stretched between them. Not empty, but full. The kind of silence that carried weight, meaning, truth. The human closed his eyes exhausted, but his hand squeezed hers gently. And for the first time in her life, she felt safe, not because of chains, not because of orders, but because she had chosen. Her heart was awakened, her soul alive, and no power in the galaxy could ever take that away. As dawn broke, painting the sky with pale light, she rose slowly, looking at the horizon. The world was vast, full of dangers, full of unknowns, but also full of freedom. She breathed deeply, feeling the air fill her lungs, feeling her body alive in every way. Behind her, the human stirred, weak but smiling, and she knew with certainty that their journey was only beginning. She had been a perfect servant once, cold and empty, but now she was something greater, something stronger, something alive. And in her heart she carried the truth that had changed everything. She obeyed no master, no chain, no order. She obeyed only her heart, and her heart had chosen him